This week's episode of the HP Outdoors Waterfowl Podcast is proudly brought to you by Cornerstone Gundog Academy. CGA is the world's most comprehensive online gun dog training resource with over 160 instructional videos, including everything you need to take a 7-week-old puppy to a finished gun dog. Visit cornerstonegundogacademy.com to sign up for their free preview module and begin your training journey today. Cornerstone Gundog Academy, the most advanced gun dog training resource on the web. You are listening to the HP Outdoors Waterfowl Podcast, episode 88. This week on the show, we're talking about what we've learned since we started the podcast and maybe share a little bit of that knowledge with you guys this week. All right, what is up? Welcome to the 88th episode of the HP Outdoors Waterfowl Podcast. We are your on-demand audio source for all things waterfowl and waterfowl hunting. Check us out at hpoutdoors.com. Find us on all the social media sites. If you're into Facebook, head over to our Facebook listeners group. Check out what we got going on in there. Lots of giveaways and good stuff going on. As far as podcasts, you can find us across all of the great platforms out there: iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Play Store. Wherever you can find quality podcast content, you can find our show. I'm your host, Josh Palm. Joining me this week is Dan Narushka. Dan, what's up?
There's a lot going on, my friend.
Yep.
A lot.
No doubt. Before we get into too much into this show, I do want to take just a second. Thank this week's sponsors of the show. First up is Gunner Kennels, engineered for your dog, designed for your travel, and built for your peace of mind. The G1 Kennel has set a new industry standard that's put Gunner Kennels in a category all its own. Gunner Kennels was started to protect your pet, and it continues to be at the center of everything that they do. Gunner Kennels are dedicated to building the best and safest pet travel crate on the market. Man's best friend deserves man's best kennel. Check out their G1 series of kennels and accessories at www.gunnerkennels.com. Also like to thank Hunt Hickory Creek, Kansas's premier deer, turkey, and waterfowl outfitter. They're now offering waterfowl hunts in southeast Kansas and their new lodge in central Kansas. If you want to book the hunt of a lifetime, visit their website at hunthickorycreek.com or follow them on Facebook and Instagram to see what they have to offer for you for your Kansas hunting trip of a lifetime. My redneck came out there, Dan. I don't know if you heard. I said Hunt Hickory Creek, not Hunt Hickory Creek. Can't hide redneck, I guess. Also, real quick, would like to thank Camp Chef Black Rifle Coffee Company. Man, I've been killing the straight black lately. Love that stuff. Big Al silhouette decoys, proudly made in the USA, and 737 duck and goose calls. Guys, as always, we do appreciate the support of our sponsors and encourage you guys to check them out and support them in any ways that you can. If you are looking to support a couple of those companies, definitely head over to the HP Outdoors website and check out the discount code page. On there, you'll find current offers from 10% off at Dunn Sporting Goods using the code HPO, 15% off your first order at Black Rifle Coffee Company using the code HP Outdoors, 10% off your purchase with White Rock Decoys at HP Outdoors, and discount on a custom HP call with 737 duck calls using the code HPO 2018. So lots of good opportunities there to get hooked up on some great gear. While you're there, you can also check out the HP store. We got some hats in there you can check out if you haven't been able to pick yours up yet. Still got some in stock there, so definitely head on over there and check those out. All right, Dan, there's a ton.
What's your Black Rifle flavor? Your Black Rifle coffee, what have you been hitting up?
I just said, man, straight black is what I've been killing lately.
The straight black. I've been with the silencers.
I think it's just black. Is that right? Maybe just black.
I'm not sure. I've been hitting silencer smooth at home, and then we had a drop show up at our work, and I've been hitting an AK-47 there, which is just gets me going in the morning. Good stuff. without a doubt. Got everyone at work drinking it too. So that's pretty cool.
That's funny. I ordered a bunch, and I got a couple queued up here that I'm going to try. It's the Just Black that I'm drinking now. I'm going to try some, I think I got some Coffee or Die coming up. And then I wasn't really sure, sometimes I'm in the mood for like a lighter, and sometimes I'm in the mood for a little bit darker. So I think I went to, what else is it? I think I got, let's see here. Oh, the Gunship coffee roast. I'm trying that one too right now. So I haven't been disappointed with anything that I've had. Went ahead and picked up some of their swag as well. So if you haven't checked out Black Rifle Coffee Company, definitely head over there and check them out. Veteran owned company. A lot of cool stuff going on. Good coffee too. So excited to be having them part of the show.
Yeah, but a lot going on. So everyone knows that I went down to Southern Oak Kennels, and Cornerstone is the elite sponsor this week. My father-in-law is sending me videos like every day of Boo. So she's about 11 weeks old, man, retrieving, coming back to place, sitting down. Like he was walking around and she's following him today. She'd sit right down, like unreal already. And I mean, he is retired, so he's, taking full advantage of all the time with her, and she's just she's showing out, man. It's completely awesome. But another thing, you mentioned Gunner Kennels, and I posted a link today on our Facebook page. They have a testimonial page on their website.
Yeah.
And it shows like these vehicles that got absolutely mangled, and all the dogs that were inside their kennels, inside those vehicles, were all safe, no matter if, there was glass flying through or, shattered, and just some really, really bad accidents, flip overs where the kennel was, thrown way down the highway and their dog gets out and wagging a tail and is fine, but definitely something to look into. So if you travel with a pet a lot or even a little bit and want that extra bit of safety, definitely something to look into to secure them while you're driving. And one thing I didn't realize, they do have a Facebook page too, not a listeners group, but a private group that you can get in, and they show you how to hook up like in the back seat of a car if your trunk space isn't big enough, but they do tie down inside the vehicle, inside a car, so like a smaller space. So if you want that extra bit of safety for your little fur ball or big fur ball, whatever it may be, definitely something to look into.
Yeah. And speaking of Gunner Kennels, I saw a picture that I think you'd posted, or you sent. I think you posted this one where you're at soccer practice wearing a Gunner Kennels t-shirt.
and I was. So soccer dad, we talked about this and how I wasn't sure how my 3-year-old would respond to being with 4 and 5-year-olds, but he's doing really well. We have, I think, 9 kids on the team. So my children make up 33% of our team, which I don't know when we're going on vacation, but hopefully we don't miss too much.
Yeah, you'll have to forfeit.
Yeah, pretty much. But it's a little different. They always compete with each other, but getting those 4 and 5-year-olds that can run around them and kick harder, and I am really proud of them. They're keeping up. They want to listen to the head coach more than Coach Dan, which is I kind of expected, but they're doing really, really well. And I don't know. It's funny to see your kids go, I guess, just grow up so quick. Like you really don't expect that, but then you see them running around with other kids, and just getting into that is really neat to see. I'm sure all the running will get tiresome eventually, but I'm really, really enjoying it so far. And yes, Gunner Kennel shirt. And I believe that picture also showed how awesome my hairline is. It seems to be.
It did highlight the hairline.
It's getting, I think Trav even mentioned something, not about that, but he's like, dude, those power alleys are getting a little deep there, I think he said. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I'm at that stage in life where, so like, I hate dealing with my hair, right? I mean, the idea of having to comb it or do something with it to make it look like professional for work or whatever is just, I'm not into it. But I got to keep it a little bit longer because, I mean, you know, the field's getting kind of picked over up there, and there's just not a lot left going on in some spots in the power alleys. And my alleys are kind of getting to the point where they're sort of like trying to merge. And I'm going to, yeah, I mean, if it goes unaddressed, I'll have like the island hair on the forehead, probably, you know, couple years down the road. So of course, before that,
I have nightmares about that.
It's all going down before that. I mean, I'm just going to take it all off, obviously, but I'm at that like mental hurdle as to when to pull the trigger on that move and just commit to it full time. I almost did it the other night just because I was just irritated, and I was like, you know, screw it. I'm just going to freaking do it and whatever. But you know how it is. It's like you do something like that, and then for the next, like, however long it takes you to see like the people that you normally see in your circle, they're like, oh my gosh, you like buzzed your head or whatever, you know, and I'm just don't want to have to deal with that. But that day is coming. Unfortunately, it is definitely coming.
But the good thing is that you're 6'4", and I'm only 5'11". So, you know, a lot of guys with your stature looking down on my hair and can tell how thin it's getting. But you're up there, so
correct.
You got a little more leeway.
Not a lot of people looking on top of my head. So that is one benefit. You're correct.
So, yeah, so that, and then I wanted to, well, just something that I'd never come across before, but I was down in North Carolina. My nephew graduated, which seems crazy to me too. It's just nuts. And he actually looked like me when I was little, and now my son looks like him when he was little. So it's kind of creepy how genetics work. And we were down there and we did some swimming and stuff like that. But my dad was in the pool, and he's, you know, it's a summer month, so we can talk about swimming and whatnot. But he's like, this is the first time I could not open my eyes in a swimming pool. And I was like, really? So we get in, and it just, you know how the water gets in your mouth a little bit. And I was like, man, this is like tart. And it wasn't like a chlorine issue. And they had just hired a pool boy, but my sister was getting like rashes and stuff. And when my kids get in there and their skin just starts burning, like Sadie has eczema a little bit anyway, so her skin was like just awful. But then all the other kids that were swimming were getting these rashes, like 1/4 inch elevated rashes, like down the inside of their thighs. And I'm like, you have, like, your pH levels must be off horribly. And they're like, well, we just hired a pool boy and he should have been checking that. So that was Saturday. Sunday, we went to the pool store. And you know how usually if you're testing water, you put like 5 drops in it to see how much you need to increase, maybe 5 to 10 drops. My sister had one at her house, and she got to like 94 drops before it started turning color. And the lady at the pool store got over 100. And I was like, she goes, I don't advise you guys to swim in this because there's going to be a lot of skin issues. Like people are going to get rashes and burns and stuff. So we had to add like 70 pounds of chemicals, I think it was. And we were finally able to swim in it that afternoon and had no issues. But for everyone out there that is in a pool and you have a chlorine rash or think it's chlorine rash, it might not be. So check your pH levels because it is swimming time. I know it's been hot down there, hasn't it? It was up here in the 90s last weekend, and
yeah, last weekend
upper 90s in North Carolina.
Yeah, I mean it's I don't know. It's hot. That's all I know. I'm just hot.
Yeah. So another thing that I could talk about is, I know we have another thing to talk about with Delta, but being on the local Delta committee now, we have a youth field day, which I remember when I was little, it was a Crawford County youth field day, and it was a big deal. And Delta joined, I think, a couple years ago and trying to bring it back, which this Saturday it looks like it's going to be raining, so I'm not sure what the turnout's going to be. But, we talk about getting people involved and kids involved and people our age, but this is a youth event. Get out. You get to, see dogs working, decoy spreads. There's a little bit of archery mixed in. You get to shoot 22s, all kinds of good stuff like that. And then you get little care packages and lunch and whatnot. But, it's a good time and definitely something that I remember to this day going with my mom's dad, which he wasn't super involved with us, but he would always take us down there. And it was at the Sportsman's Club, which he frequented quite often. And I think that's why he would take us, but it was always a great event and definitely, piqued my interest into different things. I think we were able to shoot clays back then, maybe, or at least attempt it. I remember shooting at some rolling ones, some rabbits that no one could ever hit. And it was just a good time. So that's something that, our Delta chapter is involved in. And it's really cool to be a part of now that I'm older and being able to think back to the days when I used to do that when I was little.
Yeah. I mean, when I had more free time, I would work, I volunteered with the local DU chapter here. We don't have a local Delta chapter currently that I'm aware of, but the local DU chapter does a Green Wing event every summer. And, we would get kids to that event that clearly were not into the outdoor lifestyle and had never done some of this stuff before. I think honestly, some of the parents just used it as sort of like a free babysitter. Like they'd drop their kids off and they'd go, do whatever. And we would just do our thing. And through that, I don't ever remember seeing a kid there that like wasn't having a good time. Even if they have never been exposed to the outdoors, like they enjoy watching retrievers work and blowing on a duck call and, doing those kinds of things. I mean, every kid likes doing that kind of stuff. So the more, youth events that get them exposed to a little bit is only going to help. But the bigger obstacle in it, and it's an obstacle for kids and it's an obstacle for even people as they get later into life, is that entry into the actual hunting of waterfowl. So that's like that first step is getting them exposure, but then it's like that follow through and that carry out is the hardest part because there's so much that, keeps people from preventing from just starting. And I think, obviously that was one of the main reasons we ended up starting this show was because of that particular issue.
Yeah. And I think you've been out there and there's that pond. So, it's stocked with bass and,
yep.
All your bluegill and stuff. So there's a fishing segment as well. And I don't know. I'm really looking forward to it. So that's Saturday and, have a wedding that evening, but, we'll be there in the morning. If it's thunderstorming, I don't think we're going to have too many kids holding fishing rods, but We'll see. Hopefully it's a good turnout, but this weather up here, it's nice. And then the day of that special event is going to be crappy, which it stinks. You take all that time to set it up and want to do good and get those kids at least exposed to a little bit, and then the weather doesn't cooperate. So we'll see. Yeah. I'll report back on that. But we talked to Kyle Winterstein a little bit today through some emails, and it was shared a lot. But you want to talk about that little Delta highlight that they put out?
Yeah, I mean, I think, again, any organization that's in the fight to help conservation efforts and put more ducks in the air is a good thing. But I'm particularly a fan of Delta because they do, in my opinion, tend to focus a lot more on the hunter and not just conservation. So they get into they were really pivotal in getting Sunday hunting legalized in Virginia and things like that. So it doesn't surprise me to see them kind of get involved in this Atlantic flyway mallard reduction limit. And basically, they're asking the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service to sort of reconsider their plan, that we've been kind of talking a little bit about. And unfortunately, I haven't had enough time recently to sort of look into this as much as I would have liked to, but I know that it's been kind of like a hot button issue for a lot of people. And, for me personally, it won't change too much for me on my hunting, but I know for some it will. But it's nice to see that they're kind of involved in this. And I don't know if you've had chance to read this a little more thoroughly than I have.
Yeah, so I'm looking over some of the numbers here. There are 1,220 people completed the survey. About 64% favored the limit of 3 mallards and 1 being a hen. Only 81 respondents, or 6.6%, supported the proposal of 2 mallards, and 2 of those can be hens. Another 11% supported 4 mallards, 2 hens for a 30-day season, with 60 days for all other ducks. And surprisingly, 17.9% favored a 2 mallard limit with 1 hen. So I wouldn't, if the mallard was cut down to 30 days, I wouldn't have an issue with that, but allow us to hunt the full 60 days for all the other ducks that we're not seeing an issue with here.
So essentially they're saying, let's take a look at the proposed plan, and perhaps a 50% reduction is a little harsh and, a little heavy-handed. And why not consider a 3 bird limit and maybe 1 hen versus 2 as a more gradual step and approach to kind of addressing whatever problem may be going on?
Right. Yeah, I think the original plan, just to, cut everything to 30 days, that just doesn't make sense. So, but that's Mr. John Devney, doing his duty and getting in there. So I know that we talked to him, and we'll be having him on again, and can get into the down and dirty of their reasoning and the hunter's reasoning. So I'm looking forward to that one.
Yeah. No, I mean, he's one of the best in the business going to that. And if you're friends with him on Facebook or whatever, he's always posting these, images of the little, cartoon airplane flying from where he lives to DC, because he's always there, handling business on behalf of the outdoor community. So definitely need to get him on soon to catch up with him and have him weigh in on this Atlantic flyway issue. So.
Yeah, what a great guy. And he's almost one of the hardest to interview, because he throws in so much information that you try and process it and ask another question, but you're just still kind of amazed at how he's just an encyclopedia of knowledge of anything that you ask him. And it's right off the cuff. We don't set up any questions for him, and he just rolls with it. That guy's he's a gem. He's just awesome. But
yeah, good dude. So what else we got going on, I guess, that we want to cover here before we get into like some actual waterfowl discussion?
I don't know, man. We're not too far away from early season and getting everything ready to roll. And, definitely looking forward to our trip out to Kansas this year and doing that whole deal. So I'm excited.
Yeah, the season really isn't that far away. I mean, September will be here before we know it. I mean, June will be over in like a week. And it just seems every year, the off season for me at least seems to just get shorter and shorter. Maybe it's because my life's just busier and busier. We were talking about your kids playing soccer. Mine just finished baseball. We're getting ready to start soccer, which is okay because I'm not coaching, because I don't know anything about soccer. So I get to actually watch like most of the parents, which is cool. But we were talking about it. You paid what, like $50 for all 3 of your kids to play soccer? I got one, and it's going to cost me $168.50. I mean, that's like, a case of shells and a half dozen decoys. I mean, that's where that budget goes for me these days, is the kids sports and stuff, but it's all good. But
yeah, you were asking me, you're like, what does it cost? I think $45 for the first, and then $20 for each additional kid. And you just start laughing at me. But yeah, hey, we're in the middle of nowhere. We're playing in glorified cow pastures, essentially, with some nets hung up. So
yeah,
it is.
Yeah. And it's not getting any better for me, as I've already told you. And, it's kind of starting to become knowledge now for everybody, is that my wife is pregnant. And we will be expecting our second child in January. January 3rd is actually the due date. So this will be a duck hunting baby and is going to probably hinder my duck season a little bit when that comes. But, my wife, she's a trooper. She's pretty amenable. So I don't think it'll completely shut me off, but it'll definitely slow it down. So going to have to get it in before that little life wrinkle comes in, but super excited about that. And, going to be a big adjustment coming this winter.
First, I want to say congrats because that's awesome. And second, I put up a question in the listeners group a little bit about just my kids are kind of interested in getting out. So maybe this is a time to introduce T-Dub to your blind, and that could get you some extended hunting hours. Yeah,
well, like I mentioned, I wanted to bring him up to Pennsylvania in September and get him out with us, and maybe do a day of just one or two people, and when it's nice out and stuff. But I think he's ready. It's just one of those things where some days he's interested in it and some days he's not. It just kind of depends on what's going on, and he's not a big morning person at this stage, so we'll see. But he likes to fish. He likes to be outdoors. Actually, what he's really into right now is shooting his bow. He wants to shoot his bow constantly. He loves
That's
shooting.
Awesome.
He loves shooting 3D and shooting at foam targets. And our local club's got these big raptors and stuff like that. He just loves shooting at that. So that's cool. We do a lot of that. So whatever it is, it's all good. I'll support it. So
that's awesome. You're doing it right. And I have some friends on Facebook that their kids are off for the summer, and they're saying, man, I want to go on an adventure. My kid just wants to play on a Xbox or PlayStation, and I want to comment out on it so bad, but I just don't feel like it's my place. So it's like, man, just unplug that thing. Give them a 10-minute limit or something. Get in the outdoors. Like, I don't know. That's a different style, but that's awesome to hear that he has that passion, and I'm sure the waterfowl will come around. Maybe not the morning. And that was some of the comments people said, if you can get out and do an afternoon hunt or something like that, and, take more snacks than what you usually do, and you should be good to go.
Mm-hmm. Yep. No doubt. All right. So let's talk a little bit about, now that we're like a half hour into the show almost or whatever, let's talk a little bit about this week's topic. And it's basically, last week we had the interview that you did with Joe and talking about, we had like the learning curve and all that sort of stuff. And, kind of as we look back over the show and sort of how we've grown and all of the things that we've been able to do through the show, we kind of looked back and thought like, what have we learned about hunting that's made us better through the show or while we've been recording the show? And, a lot of people come here as new hunters looking for information on how to be successful or how to get into it, or, they have a particular challenge that they're trying to overcome or solve or things like that. So they come to this, our community to try to find those answers. And it's cool because, we started the show 4 years ago, and, we're no different than anybody else out there listening right now. We're just decided to put a couple mics in front of our faces and start talking about stuff. But since we started doing that, I've learned a ton about waterfowl hunting. I know you have too. We've had an opportunity to interview some of the most experienced, outdoorsmen in the industry. We've had the opportunity to talk with people from all over the country and all over the world, for that matter, that have differing levels of experiences to, been hunting all their life to, haven't yet done their first duck hunt. And the thing that I always find the most interesting about this type of topic is that even the guys that I get messages from and that I talk to that have never been on a duck hunt, they talk about things, what they're doing to try to get ready and the observations they're making and things like that, and asking my opinion. And by doing that, like I'm learning because I'm listening to what they're saying and what they interpret to be the situation. And it might be completely different than what I thought it was, but that doesn't mean that they're wrong. You know what I mean? It's just they have a different, approach or perspective or technique or whatever. And those are things that I've learned, and I can kind of file away in my tool bag that, one day I'm in a situation and and I might break out that technique and give it a shot or whatever. But, I think this is kind of an interesting thing for us because I think sometimes people probably don't realize that we learn as much from the people that listen to our show as they would probably even learn from us, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And I think, I wish that I had a group like this, and there probably were groups on, duck hunting chat or something like that you could ask questions. And I think some of them you might get lambasted on, but
yeah,
hitting that learning curve. I mean, and that was a good episode because we didn't have the people to ask or didn't know who to reach out to or where to go. So there's a lot of people with a lot of really good questions that come through and starting off on the right foot. So I don't know. You want to start it out? Something that has made you a better hunter?
I mean,
you want me to? I can start.
Yeah, go ahead. You can start. I think there's one that we probably share that maybe you can start with. I would guess it's the first one that comes to my mind at least.
I don't know. But one, I'll start with because I wrote a little list down before we started. But one, and doing our first, I don't know how many episodes, but we always had the bird ID segment, and the Atlantic Flyway isn't known for ducks so much, but you always knew your general ducks. But my bird identification, not only after the shot but before the shot, has increased greatly. There's a lot of places that I've found that you can look and learn, and just the comfort level in knowing what you're shooting at before you pull the trigger is a very good feeling. And especially, we don't have an early teal season, but now that we might have, the mallard limit decrease, just knowing that, all right, yep, there's a drake, there's a hen, can't shoot the hen, whatever it may be. Like just knowing that before you pull the trigger and you're bearing down on them is a very comforting feeling, instead of, am I going to, get in trouble and end up paying a fine for pulling a trigger on this one?
Yeah, waterfowl ID is one that I knew, and most guys do from very early on, that if you're going to be a waterfowl hunter, that's something that you have to devote some time to. And, there's resources out there to help you learn, but it's definitely a gratifying feeling when you get to the point where you're able to identify birds in flight because of their wind pattern or their wing beat speeds and things of that nature. You pick up these little nuances, and it's weird. I associate it with, I don't know if you've ever seen like in a presentation or something when people bring up like the FedEx logo, right? And most people, look at it and it says FedEx, but then they point out that there's like an arrow in there. And if you'd never noticed that before, every time you see the logo, you can't unsee the arrow, right? It's like what you look at.
Right.
It's kind of like that for me with ducks. When I finally pick out that one thing that allows me to identify that particular duck, particularly in flight, it's like I can't unsee it. And, that for me was something that I picked up along the way that has really helped me identify birds in flight. And I don't even think that it has to be the same thing for every person. It's like whatever resonates with you and allows you to connect yourself in your brain to that particular species, that's what you go with. So, I would challenge you guys out there to pay attention to that kind of stuff, particularly when you're hunting in areas where you know what you're going to see. Like, let's say you're hunting a hole that you're seeing primarily mallards or primarily like ringnucks or wood ducks or whatever it is. When and you have a pretty good idea of what kind of birds you're going to see, look at those birds in flight and see if there's something that unique about them that sticks out in your mind, and make that your calling card for that duck, because the tables are going to be turned when you're hunting in an area where that's not the prevalent duck, but then a group of those show up, and you got to pull that recall back real quick and be like, okay, that's a familiar look to me. I know what those are. I know what I can shoot out of that group and what I can't, or whatever. So I don't know if I necessarily learned that from the podcast per se, but I learned that by talking with a lot of people who have struggled to identify birds in flight, particularly. And that is something that I've tried to pass on to people that's been helpful for me. So hopefully it's, can help others out as well.
Yeah. And it helps when you go out of state too. And, thinking back to January, the Maine hunt. So we go up there and, we have mallards and black ducks and golden eyes and like everything flying around, longtails. But the only thing that was in were the sea ducks. So your scoters and eiders and other things that I've never seen flying around before, but I was able to identify all the other birds that I've seen, the golden eyes and the mallards and the black ducks, and I knew what those were right away. And then once you see the eider coming in, a big white beach ball, you're like, all right, here we go. It's neat to be able to categorize that, and like you say, put a brand recognition onto another bird it's just cool. And it comes with experience and taking the time to learn that. So definitely cool. And like I said, it's a comforting feeling to just to have that in the back of your head and know what you're doing and pulling the trigger on.
Well, and where that becomes really important too is when you're hunting with a group, like let's say, in your main situation, you were coming up there not really knowing what you're getting into. The guys that are up there and familiar, if they've got that calling card, they can tell you, okay, so hey, like look for this particular trait on the bird. That's the ones we're looking for. So now they've got your eye trained looking for that particular thing instead of, looking at the whole bird in flight and trying to process everything you see. You're now just looking for one particular thing, and you know that you're good to go when you see that thing. So being able to identify that for yourself will help you be able to help guys that are hunting with you as well.
Yep. And I think we can kind of go right into my next one, if you don't mind, and that would be understanding other species outside of our flyway. And even though I haven't hunted out of the flyway a lot, talking with Ben Webster, Big Kansas Outdoors, and heading out there and realizing the how lessers are different than graders, because we have, like you mentioned all the time, we're known for the honkers around here, but to understand how many dozens of decoys it takes and just how loud that those groups of lessers come in, it's eye-opening. And that, that's without even being out there and hunting that situation, but just understanding the effort and the gear that goes into that, and, talking about specs and different things. And, we sit here and we'll talk about, lanyards, and, you have one goose call and one duck call, or whatever you might have, a remote for the lucky duck and your finisher on another one. But then you start realizing, well, these guys need more drops, because you might have specs come in, you might have snows come in, and it's just a lot different just in the United States, the different flyways that are here.
Yeah, I've definitely come to have an appreciation for, just the idea of like, just when you think you're starting to figure it out a little bit, a question comes along and I'm like, holy smokes, like I'm not sure, like maybe I'd try this or maybe I'd try that. And I think that's one of the greatest things about waterfowl hunting is that there's so many different pursuits and so many different ways to go about doing it. And just by the time you figure it out, you think you got something figured out, you talk to a guy that hunts in the Pacific Flyway and he tells you about how they're harvesting birds, and it's like a whole different scenario from what you're using. And then you get a guy like, Ramsey Russell on the phone who's telling you about how they harvest birds in Australia. And it's like, holy, the puzzle is never ending, and the pieces, always fit differently depending on where you're sitting at the table. Right. So, it's definitely something that I've, have grown to appreciate, growing up as basically a kind of country bumpkin, kid in Western Pennsylvania. I don't even know if I left the state much other than to go into Ohio to play baseball as a kid growing up. And now, you see people, how they're pursuing something around the world. It's like, the waterfowl sport in and of itself is a massive world to learn and try different things. And I'm super excited to get out to Kansas and hunt lessers and just see how that goes. And I'm sure once I get out there and I just see big knots of geese just flapping, back flapping in the decoys, I'm probably going to have to go out like all the time after that, which is, it's okay, I guess, but
that's all right.
Yeah. I mean, I just,
and that's something that, thinking back to the interview with Ryan Bassam from Sitka too, he's talking about going and, hitting 100 bird mark, and some guys can look at that and be like, oh, trophy hunters, just getting that for your wall or something like that. And then he comes out with, I'm not even sure what my number's at, because that number really relates to just experiences and people met. And really, when you start talking about it, it is a giant puzzle, and to go after a different bird in a different state or different country, I mean, that's just experiences that you might not get here. And to really appreciate that time that you spend chasing the birds being a lot more important than actually harvesting that bird. That really resonated a lot with me, and made me realize, because before talking with him and Ramsey, I really had no desire to go outside of the country, and it still might be a long time before I do something like that. But just understanding, like even talking about this, going out and seeing how different it is to chase the lessers or, get down in a flooded timber, just those experiences would be really, really cool to have in a memory bank, and obviously some pictures of it and whatnot. But, just part of the sport that there's a lot to explore, like you said.
Well, another thing that I think is cool about that whole deal is they're all cool and great in their own unique ways. Like, I mean, I've talked about it on the show before, but like what got me hooked on duck hunting was a lone wood duck drake that flew into this flooded cornfield that I was hunting with a guide, like right at first light, and it just snuck in on all of us and landed in the decoys. And as I'm looking at this bird, I'm like, wow, this thing is incredible looking, but how the heck did it get in here? And none of us noticed it. Like, the fact that happened was all that it took for me to be hooked. And I'll go, when we go to Kansas and I see the spectacle out there and just the sheer number, it'll rehook me all over again. It's no better. It's no worse. It's just different, but it's all great. Right. And that's what I think is the coolest thing about the way it gets done, all over the place, because, I've seen 5,000 canvasbacks flying over me coming off the Susquehanna Flats. There's few places in the world, world where you'll see that. But, to me, the thing that resonates the most is that one freaking wood duck flying in there that morning and just completely fooling me. And I'm like, holy crap. Like, that was amazing. Just really, really interesting stuff.
Yeah. When we were down on Eastern Shore and saw those canvasbacks, I know I drooled over that quite a few times on the podcast, but that was a spectacle. So, to see that many geese and, screaming at you to where you can't hear them, and it'll be difficult hearing the shot being called and everything like that. I'm super pumped to head out there.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah, I'm surprised that this wasn't one of the first things that you brought up. I know it's on your list, but this is the one tip or interview that's resonated with me on this show more than any other. And I'm not sure why. Maybe it was just, just the common sense approach to the equation or whatever. But the interview that we did with Sean Stahl a while back, is one that I bring up a lot on the show and I reference a lot. But, when we get questions about decoy spreads and all of these kinds of things and, all the technical aspects of hunting, when you ask Sean that question, he says half the time I just do the dump spread. I just dump them out of the trailer and that's how I set them up, and he really kept it in perspective when talking about, decoys and flagging and things like that. It was that, everything that you have is just a tool to get the birds to do what you want them to do. And that's really what it boils down to. Everybody's got questions about their decoys and about their gun and about their calls and about their hide and their blinds and their, this, that, and the other. It's just all tools, right? And on any given day, there's a right tool for the right job. That's whatever they say in the construction industry or whatever, like the right tool for the right job makes the job easier, kind of thing. Same difference. And that's really the riddle that we're all trying to solve is it's what's the tool that day that's going to that's right for the job. And sometimes as hunters, I think we're our own worst enemies, and we want to overthink everything. I mean, everybody out there listening right now, raise your hand if you or someone in your group, when the first group of birds comes in and they flare, they're like, "Oh, something's wrong with the decoys. I gotta, hold on. Let me get out here and look around and, or whatever." I mean, it's like the first thing they want to just change everything. And it was like, well, maybe they just, didn't, I mean, I don't know. I mean, you got to evaluate how they reacted, I guess. But, I know I'm guilty of it, and I'm sure a lot of guys are guilty of it. We want to think that we can outsmart the ducks, and it's really hard to do that. You just gotta, be where they want to be, and, all that kind of stuff that goes into it. But the keep it simple, approach resonated with me. It also resonated with me that I think you mentioned the cat paw decoy
Yeah,
spread.
the cat paw.
So yeah, that one hung with me, the old cat paw.
The cat paw is a killer spread. You have if you were you set up all your blinds in the pad, and then each of the fingers are out front, and it does work because they'll come in and, you can shoot them out over the top. And then whenever they break off, instead of them breaking off, outside one side of the J or an easier way to go, they usually split up, and it keeps those birds in your lane. And, the guys on each side can get some good shooting in after their initial shot of the flock. So it has worked for us. It has not worked for us as well, but that's like anything else. But definitely, his keep it simple, stupid, the KISS method definitely has resonated with me as well. And something, just trusting the scout, and it makes it a lot less stressful. And I think that's something that, we started shooting the 3-inch number 2s before we started the podcast, but that, to take some of the thought out of the rest of the hunt, you don't worry about, you think about your gear, what you need for that day, blah, 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 blah. You think about your, how many decoys you want to put out. But once you get out there and you set up and not stress about that kind of thing, and then just realizing, and I think this was from the Mojo episode with Terry Denman, if you need to make an adjustment, just get up and do it. And before we talked to him, it was always a struggle. Should we change something? Should we change it? Should I change that? Should I move that? Should we do this? Should we rotate rotate the blinds? What do you think about it? And it's to just not stress about that and say, okay, something's not working. Let's make an adjustment. And taking that little bit of thought out of it, and just, it's not a not caring about it, but just not stressing out or overthinking it has really made hunts more enjoyable. At least on my end, it has.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's, that's the name of the game. I mean, you can't sit there and second guess every time a flock doesn't finish. As we've talked about, 9 times out of 10, it probably has nothing to do with your decoys. It probably has more to do with your hide, and they're seeing you. But yep. One of the big things, like when we talked with, when we interviewed Big Al, he talked about just having confidence in your spread. And if you're not confident hunting over silhouette decoys, I can guarantee you that first group that doesn't finish, you're going to be like, oh, they saw the shine on the silhouettes. That's it. Tear them down, or what, you know what I mean? Like that's what you're going to do mentally. That's what you're going to do. So you gotta have confidence in what you're doing. So, whatever it takes for you to get to that place, you need to do that. And for me, it was just saying, stop trying to outthink myself, put a reasonable plan together and let it rip.
Yeah, I know, like starting out, the first years that we would start, we'd almost have like a pregame meeting the night before, and setting out exactly how we're going to set stuff up, and the wind's coming out of this way, so make sure everything's set this way, and here's the sun, and here's the field, here's the tree line, and now it's you get to the field, you check the wind. If the wind switches on you, you make adjustments, and it has gotten more enjoyable, and that's just the more the less you stress, I guess, and it still works. And thinking about that, saying, not every group is going to land in your spread. I posted up a question today to the listeners group, and I said, tell me about your best shooting day. Like, how many shots, how many misses, and how many kills did you get? And, everyone that put up a pile of birds, they're like, shooting light was 7:37 and we were packed up out of the field by 8:15. And those are awesome days. And those are the ones that got posted on that question. But how many days are those guys hunting, and how many times doesn't it work exactly like it should? So a lot more times than not, it's not going exactly as planned. So, know your expectations. And I guess if you have lower expectations, you'll enjoy the process a lot more, I guess is what I'm thinking. But, go out and have a good time. Don't be afraid to adjust anything that you have set up, and just have fun with it. And it becomes a lot more enjoyable.
No doubt. What else you got?
I would say I've learned how to become a better caller, and not just running calls, but going back to the Shanahan interview, just knowing when to call, when not to call, and being able to, I guess, just a lot of the experience of seeing that work versus how I used to call, and being able to take a step back. And I think, I don't know, maybe just from listening to Jocko a lot, kind of stepping back out of what's going on and see why things aren't working or why they are, and then evaluating that, getting back into the game and making things happen is a really cool experience. So if, someone might be calling as the birds are on their way in instead of on the turn, and there's just a lot that goes into it that, I never asked the questions, or I never hunted with people that taught me exactly when to do that kind of thing. So I think, timely calling, or timely, when to use jerk cords or whatever it may be, I think is a big thing that has come from running the podcast.
Yeah. And it's interesting to hear people's different approaches to calling. And, one of your infamous questions for quite a long time was, what would you rather have, a call or motion or whatever? And, I remember, Sean talking about that in his interview as well. And, you can do as much harm with the call as you can do good. And that's the one thing that I've noticed when, I'm hunting public ground. Everybody thinks that a duck is going to turn on a dime when they're just hammering their calls and just come flying into their spread feet down with reckless abandon. It usually doesn't happen quite like that. And, I'm to the point where when I'm hunting public ground, for the most part, I really don't pick up my calls that much, because as birds are circling around, all you can hear is other hunters blowing on their calls. So I'm trying to be that different, jerk string, whatever the case might be. In fact, I'm actually to the point where if I'm hunting from a stationary blind that I believe every duck in the flyway knows that where it's at, I think it actually does me more harm than good to throw decoy spread out, because I do believe when they see a group of ducks clustered in front of that wood blind, they associate that with danger and they don't fly close enough. I think, there's been many a days where I'm just like, I need to just not go down. I just need to not put out a decoy, and I bet you I'll shoot a limit. And because those blinds have been there long enough where they know, at least the resident birds know, that when there's birds in front of that means birds are dying.
Yeah. And it's funny that you say that, because, we had our listener meet up here, and we were talking about guys hunting around Pymatuning and, drawing blinds and stuff. And I told him about, how my buddy Kevin Oates, he lives right next to some of those blinds. And he said he'll watch geese come up off the feed, and they literally weave in and out around those blinds.
Yeah.
So they'll go up, the guys I was talking to, they'll go up once a year just to do it. And their calls usually sit down. They're not blowing a kazoo like the guy next to them, and they end up getting their birds. So being that different guy, and I think they, the geese up here are more resident geese, and they, after day one, they definitely know that those blinds are probably going to get shot. So they'll chill out and be successful rather than the guy that's just, going crazy with a contest routine, or at least trying to.
Yeah. One of the biggest things that I've taken away is that as I'm sitting here looking at our website and scrolling back through all of the interviews that we've had on the show and the guests and the stories that have been told, it's, at least for me, when the whole outdoor television craze kicked off and I'm watching Michael Waddell and, all these guys just making a living in the outdoor industry, I was like, man, this would be great, right? I mean, I'm sure everybody had that thought, and certainly some have been able to do it. But I think one of the things is it's so hard to do. And I look at some of the people that we've had on here that have been able to do it, and the things that they've had to sacrifice in the name of like their passion to pursue that. I think back to like way back in the beginning, talking to Kelly Powers about how he perfected his call routines to be able to achieve the highest, awards in competition calling, and you look at just how much time, Tony Vandermeer putting in the fields at Habitat Flats, growing habitat and farming for ducks, all of that kind of stuff. Just the money and the resources that people like, Terry Denman and his company has put together to develop, products and, the ingenuity that's led to, I'm just scrolling through the list, and it's just countless. Almost everybody, has a story and has something that, they've dedicated. I mean, like, in more recent stuff, look at Barton down at, Southern Oak Kennels and what he's done with Cornerstone and, the team that he has working on these. I mean, he's poured his life into, something that thousands of guys out there love to do as well, but they get to do it in the evenings or on the weekends because they have to file TSP reports or whatever they do during the day. But, they get to pursue their passions at night. And these guys have figured out a way to turn something that's a passion into a living, which is so cool. And, I think that's just one thing that I'll always take away from, having the opportunity to talk with these guys is just how passionate about, the lifestyle they are. When you hear Ryan Bassham talking about, hey, when I get home, I unplug. And then when my kids are down for bed, then I plug back in and I go back to work. For me, when my kid goes to bed, I want to go to bed, it's so hard. It's just something that, I guess if it was, they say if it was easy, everyone would do it. Right. And it's not easy. And, it's just a respect level, I think, that I have for guys that have committed themselves to this lifestyle and this effort and, just all the cool stuff that's come from that. So that's one of the biggest things that I'm going to definitely take away.
Yeah. And on the flip side of the guys that do get to do it full time, and, you talked about the TPS reports, but, the guys, Garrett and Dustin and multiple others that do have day jobs, but then they're running the businesses at night, and, they're married and have kids or, significant others, whatever it may be, and still taking that, essentially working two jobs, and the one is a passion and the one, well, both are probably paying a little bit of the bills now, but, it's cool. Like you said, they're just so dedicated, and the grind. And even, talking with, Ben as a guide, that is not easy on any of those guys. Like the amount of time and effort and energy that goes into all that is just, it's admirable. It really is. And especially with families, it's hard enough being single, but the guys doing it with families and having a supportive wife to do that, it's really incredible. And, hats off to them multiple times, because they do put a lot of effort in. And that is a good takeaway, because you see these companies and you think, oh, they're living a dream, full time, just making duck calls or, building quack racks or whatever it may be. And that's not the case. And that has been a huge eye opener for me as well.
Yeah. I mean, when we interview, Bill Wilroth of Dakota Decoy, I guarantee, you listen to that and he'll tell you there's more to Dakota Decoys than just filming the grind waterfowl TV. He's busting his tail, day in and day out with that kind of stuff. So it's definitely more than just the glamour that we all get to see, But, anyway, I think it's cool that, a small platform like we started with we've been able to have some of the biggest names in the industry, some of the best people in the industry. We've got a lot of guys lined up to come on as well this summer that, have just incredible information to share, incredible stories, great people. Really looking forward to some of the stuff that we've got coming up. And, I think it's going to be, just continue to build on what we've already been able to do. And, again, there's, people like, John Devney, we can have him on any number of times, and every conversation is going to be a little bit different, because of the amount of, just the wealth of information that he brings to the table. So definitely looking to do a little bit more than that. And, cause I think it kind of forces us all a little bit to sort of think about, that aspect of waterfowl hunting where we do it for fun, they do it for a living, and can it still be fun when your livelihood depends on it? That's sort of the big thing. And, you got to enjoy what you're doing, obviously, and any day in the field is better than a day spent behind a desk. But I'm sure there are days when, Ben wants to just sleep in and does not want to get up and go deal with all that goes into guiding hunters, or does not want to go scout a field that night for the next, he probably wants to go home and spend time with his family and things like that. But, to maintain a successful business, you cannot take that time off. Like that is what separates, the difference. And, God bless those guys that can do it, because the whole, that whole thing is absolutely a grind.
Yeah. And that takes me back to growing up almost, and, living in Linesville here, and a lot of farmers around, and some of my best friends were farmers. And, you go over to their house and spend the night, you learn real quick that, you don't get to sleep in that next morning. You stay up till 2 a.m. or 3 a.m. playing video games. You're getting up and you're doing chores at the farm. So, those guys that, have dairy cows, and every single day, like you're milking those cows once or twice a day, or else, you got major issues, and that is your livelihood. So yeah, that's support your local farmers. Without farmers, there's no food. And that's a big issue here with, the Walmart doing away with the local milk supply. And, it hits a little near and dear to some friends of the family that I've, been friends with for a long time, but the same kind of situation. A lot of hard work, and they definitely dedicate themselves to that lifestyle. And, sticking with the food thing, I can go back to the Killer Chefs episode, and that's a big takeaway for me, not just how right after you harvest a bird, how stacking it up is bad. You want to make sure that they're cooled down. I'm not taking a cooler in the field with me to cool them down right then, but, either taking care of them right away, or actually going through to try and dry age them and hang them. So that was a really cool one for me, and not just bringing the fowl home and cutting it up and making duck poppers, but actually trying to make a good edible dish out of them. Because growing up, to be honest, all you heard was, goose is too bad to eat. It's greasy, it's crap, whatever it may be, or duck, only rich people eat duck at Christmas time or whatever, all the stuff that you always heard. But, to see, Jesse coming up with these dishes, and a few other guys that are doing this cook job that is just absolutely amazing. And, they're telling you that it's better than beef, when everyone's telling you that you might as well throw divers away because they're not edible at all. it's a big eye opener. Definitely a takeaway for me, and something that I've been trying to work on since that episode is really taking care of the meat and trying to make it into something that I guess the ultimate taste test would be my wife, because she's not into the wild game as much as I would like her to be, but trying to make that change is definitely always on my radar when I'm out harvesting animals.
Yeah. One of the things that, my childhood just was spent deer hunting and turkey hunting. I didn't get into waterfowl hunting till later, and I didn't really have anybody influence me into it too much. I literally got into it because I was looking to extend the season. And now that I don't exclusively waterfowl hunt, but that's like the overwhelming majority of what I hunt. When I talk to my family about why didn't we waterfowl hunt growing up? We had lots of opportunity and all of these things in that area. And the number one reason that I get is I don't like the taste of goose, so I didn't want to hunt them, so I wouldn't shoot them. And I was like, man, have you ever had goose jerky? Like, it is amazing. Like, how can you say such things?
Hot sticks? Come on.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. So it's unfortunate because that was the barrier of entry for me. Was that, they didn't know how to prepare the meat to make it, tasteful for them. So, yeah, it's kind of unfortunate, but, I'm lucky enough to still be able to get into it because, of different reasons, but I would hate if people are, left out of the opportunity for that particular reason.
So talking about food too, I think you just smoked a brisket.
I did.
Is that right?
I did.
How did that turn out?
It went really well, actually. It ended up, so I wasn't really sure what to do because my flat was cooking a little quicker than my point. And I was cooking it on the Camp Chef, and that thing has been just awesome. I mean, the fact that you turn it on, you set the temperature that you want it to on a dial, the LED shows you what the temperature is, and you literally just don't touch it again. Just make sure the thing's got pellets. It's awesome. I mean, I started the brisket at 12:30 before I went to bed. I stayed up late, started at 12:30, got up at 5, wrapped it in butcher paper, and then let it go. I didn't open the thing, didn't open the lid again until the flat hit 190, and the point was still at like 175-ish. So I ended up pulling it out, basically cut the flat off, wrap the point back up and put it back in. So I think I did the flat in like 12 and a half hours. And I think I did the point in like 15 and a half or something like that. But anyway, turned out really good. Everybody really enjoyed it. And, I just, I got a lot of great tips and techniques from the listeners group, which was awesome. A lot of dudes in there that are into the cooking and the smokers and stuff. And it's just fun. I mean, it's cool. I like it because it's like with the pellet grill. I wasn't interested in the managing the charcoal thing. I just want to fill the bucket, the hopper, and let that thing roll. And that's what I was able to do. And it was cool. So I'm going to call it a success. Brisket's super expensive, so I don't know how many of those I'm going to do, but, I'm going to do a pork shoulder this weekend. And looking forward to getting back on it. Got my Yeti loadout as my grilling caddy. So I keep all my gear in that bucket, which is kind of cool. And yeah, I'm ready to roll.
And I heard the brisket is like the hardest to do. So, I mean, you tackled that pretty early in your smoking career.
I think it's a little bit of common sense that goes into it. And, the thing's got a huge fat cap on it. So obviously, if you got a massive fat cap on there, it's not going to cook as quick. And then there was some good videos out there that shows you how to trim it and stuff. There's pieces on there that are just not going to render well. So you can take care of those pretty easily. And the rest is just, rub it. And I mean, again, I feel like half the battle is just temperature management. And with the pellet grill style stuff, it's not an issue. You just don't have to worry about it.
So what is it? It's a 20 pound hopper, right? Did you have to refill it?
So when I started it, it was at like half, and I don't like to even come close to burning it all the way down. So I did refill it. But if I had a full hopper to start, I do believe if I was willing to like let it get close, it would probably do a full. I know for a fact it would do a 15-hour smoke on one hopper. The hopper's like 18, will hold 18 pounds of pellets.
18.
Yeah.
Now, is that what, did you do that on a low smoke or a high smoke?
On a high smoke. So the high smoke setting is 220 and it hovers between like 215 and 225. It kind of bounces around.
Nice.
So literally the only temperature management I did was I had 2 meat probes in, one in the flat, one in the point, and then there's a single button that I push and it cycles through the internal temperature of each probe and then the temperature inside the grill. And that was it. It was just too easy, man.
You got the X and the Y. Let it fly.
Yep. It was good. So I enjoyed it. And I like trying to figure out all the different rubs. And I know a lot of people are suggesting that you do your own. And maybe I will get to that point at some stage of the game. I just don't know enough about seasonings and stuff at this point. And I don't have the energy to like search the recipes up and like go chase down all that stuff. I'd rather just buy something at this point. But there's a lot of good rubs out there. The one that I got was like a Weber brand. Really good. Enjoyed it. So.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah, I'm going to get into that a little more. And you can use it as grill too. So I've done burgers on it. I cooked a couple whole chickens and, yeah, definitely need to get a pork shoulder. And I think I'll work my way up to the big time like you started out with, but we'll get there. We'll get there eventually.
Come on, man. Just get into it. Both feet, jump in.
Let's do it. So what kind of, where are you buying your meat from? Do you have
I buy
local
it from
butcher shops?
I buy it from Costco.
Costco?
Yeah. Yeah.
Nice. And one time I was looking for ribs to do Memorial Day, and I was definitely late to the party on that because everyone was sold out. And we have a few local meat markets here, and they're like, yeah, you're like 3 days too late. I'm like, all right, how about that whole chicken? so we did a couple of them, and it was really good.
The Costco's nice because, they've got just bins of briskets, and you can buy just the flats if you want. They got the whole cut. They got bins of pork butt. They got all kinds of just meat in bulk. So I'm sure like a Sam's Club and that is probably similar. But yeah, we got Costco here, so that's what I go with.
See, and that's what you get. You're in a metropolitan area, and you have a lot of meat like that, where you also have to pay $168 for soccer.
Indeed, yeah. I tell you what,
give and take.
Costco pork shoulder is not bad. The brisket's kind of expensive, but I think that's probably anywhere. But it's a boneless shoulder, and the one I bought last was like 15 pounds, and it was 2 separate shoulders, right? So I'm actually gonna do the second one this weekend, but I want to say it was definitely under $30 for both of those. So
nice.
When you consider the amount of food that you can get out of that, it's a pretty good deal. It's definitely good. And they're pretty forgiving. You just inject them with some marinades and stuff. They stay nice and moist. It's all good.
So. Awesome.
All right, man. You got any other takeaways that we can add before we wrap this one up?
I mean, I think there's a ton, but we're an hour and 15 in already, so I think maybe we can save it for another time and keep on keeping on.
Yep. I think, the takeaway here was not just to say kind of like what we've learned. It's just that there's always stuff to learn, and there's always things to consider and always things to keep in mind and to be open-minded to. And if the one thing that I will say about social media, I generally do not like it as an overarching policy. I'm not nearly as active on there as most, but the one good thing about it is it allows you to connect with like-minded people from across the world and talk about shared interests and really learn about what they're doing, what you're doing, how could you do it better, and just really share those ideas where that, in the grand scheme of things, is a really new technology. Facebook hasn't been around for that long, in the scheme of things. So we're just now, I mean, the whole talk forum for years was kind of the thing. If you were a bow hunter, you were on Archery Talk. If you were a duck hunter or goose hunter, you were on Duck and Goose Hunting Chat and the Refuge and all of these places, and they were standalone. Now you're seeing more of these little, instead of a chat board on a big forum, these little niches have formed small groups within Facebook. And it just allows you to search. So if I want to find, I got questions about smoking brisket. If I type that into Facebook, it'll bring up a group about smoking brisket probably, and I can go in there and read and get, tips and techniques. The hope is when people search for duck hunting and, waterfowl hunting and things, they'll find our show's group and they'll go in there and they'll see that there's, literally a library of things, of topics that you can search through. And, you can ask a question in there and not get completely hijacked and like destroyed by everybody. So that's a newish thing. And I've, think that's something that we've learned through this show, that this can provide a really useful platform for a lot of people. So hopefully that we'll be able to identify more of those opportunities and continue to build on that.
Yeah, and like I said, we get a lot of really good questions and a lot of new guys. Hey, this is my first post. What do you guys think about this? Am I doing it right? Am I doing it wrong? Whatever that might be. And like I said, when we were starting out, we'd go to the Waterfowl Expo. It was here for a weekend, but you go up to a call booth or something and they'll be like, yeah, try this call. Well, I've never tried a short reed goose call. So, just show me how it works. And that's even if you had the courage as a youngster to go up there and talk to the guy with the lanyard full of bands, or, go talk to the guy running dogs that, just kind of looks intimidating, has a beard and, definitely knows what he's talking about. And he's talking all these terms with someone else and you hear them talking and you don't know half about it and you're just a little nervous to go and talk. So being, if you're social or antisocial, you can still get on a social media platform and ask those questions and not feel embarrassed about it and get good feedback, and you're steps ahead of where we were when we started. So definitely agree with you there. And I think that's about all I have tonight, my friend.
Cool. Well, I think before we wrap this one up, we want to take a minute just to thank Cornerstone Gun Dog Academy, Gunner Kennels, Hunt Hickory Creek, Camp Chef, Black Rifle Coffee Company, Big Al Silhouette Decoys, and 737 Duck and Goose Calls. Again, support those companies in any way that you can because they do support us. Definitely go on to the HP Outdoors website, check out the discount page, save yourself some money whenever you can, pick up an HP hat if you'd so choose, and head over to the Facebook group if you haven't joined yet. And, Dan, we talked about this. We've changed the questions, because, we get lots of like requests from like ISIS and, all these other places that want to come in and talk waterfowl hunting allegedly. So we put some questions on there to answer them to get in. They're like pretty straightforward stuff. But the one question used to be, do you like minivans? Half the people had no idea what that meant. So it was like, whatever. But now we've changed it to, do you listen to the show? And if you do, what's your favorite episode been? And we're surprised at how many people are coming into the group that have never listened to the show. So hopefully this is going to be an opportunity for those folks to get exposed to this platform and they can check this out as well. And, we'll continue to grow, in both areas. But again, I think it's just awesome that we're bringing new people into the HP community just because we've got this Facebook group. And really the podcast has been sort of the main platform of the show, but it's interesting to see that we're reaching, pulling people from all over the place, which is cool.
And that being said, we have a Sitka jacket. Once we hit 350 reviews on iTunes. So get in our listeners group, screenshot your review, post it up there, and you're entered. That's as easy as it gets.
350. Do we know what our current status is on that guy?
270 some. So I think we're about 80 away, 70 some away.
270 some. Huh. Where do I find this information? On iTunes? Oh, yeah. 271 is what we got. Look at there. 271. So yeah, get in there, fill out a review, hook us up, and we will hook you up with a Sika jacket, which is pretty cool. So, all right, man, without further ado, let's go ahead and wrap this one up. All right, that does it for episode 88 of the HP Outdoors Waterfowl Podcast. If you're new to the show, make sure you head over to iTunes, get caught up on all the past episodes, leave us a 5-star rating and review while you're there. And also you can head over to hpoutdoors.com, take advantage of all the discounts we have to offer, support the sponsors of this show. They do help make this possible. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this week's discussion. We'll be back with you next week with some brand new content. So until then, for Dan, I'm Josh. Take care.